Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. I wanted to spend just a couple minutes talking about the hypochondriacs who once again are trying to steal Christmas. We all remember what 2020 season was like. For everyone, I don't care what holiday you were celebrating, it was a pretty dismal affair in many quarters, and quite a few people were still drinking the Kool-Aid made from the ingredients of COVID hysteria. And this is despite the fact that by the time we got to December 2020, there was just a mountain, a literal mountain of evidence that testified to the scientific reality that COVID was not as bad as previously feared. But instead of rejoicing, many families were still listening to the likes of Fauci, the pharmaceutical companies, and tyrannical politicians. If people hadn't been wrapped up in that kind of fear that they had been programmed to have, life would have gone back to normal a very long time ago. And the opportunists who took advantage of everyone's anxiety about this new unknown illness, they would have been held accountable for that. And this is why blind faith and blind emotion of any kind, if we are nixing our instincts, if we are nixing our capacity of logic and reason, it is so incredibly dangerous to us. Fearful people who cannot see outside of that fear tend to be very obedient people. They're much more likely to follow orders, however extreme and wrong those orders are. As long as they've bought into the idea that they'll be safe if they do as they're told, they will keep on doing it. Now, not content with, making things difficult last year. Now this year, right on cue, the tyrants have rallied the hypochondriacs and they're trying to put a damper on the 2021 holidays. Didn't we all know this was coming? Of course they had to. Trust politicians and all these other manipulators in society to say, you know what happens every year since the history of ever and all of human experience? When the weather gets colder, there's an uptick in illness generally. So we'll use that uptick and we'll convince everyone that this bug we keep telling them about is going to get them, and then they'll keep doing what we say, and we've bought ourselves a little bit more time to enjoy that gravy train of money, power, and control. Now, thankfully, unlike last year, I think more people are wise about what's going on, and they have concluded that the COVID restrictions have everything to do with control and turning a free people into a peasant class, and that the elites will then become a new aristocracy, and all of this has nothing to do with the preservation of anyone's life or their health. Still, there hasn't been enough of a pushback to stop the politicians from continuing going down this road. So if anything is going to change, then we've got to stop complaining about the results of their behaviors, which we know are going to continue, and just get down to the fundamentals. And I've been trying to mention that in more and more of these more social commentary videos. We need to start making our own plans rather than waiting and hoping and trying to persuade the politicians to do the right thing. Please, they're politicians. They're criminals in suits. That's all that they are. They're not going to do the right thing. But we, the people, maybe we can. First thing I think we need to come to grips with is that governments have no competency in medical matters. None. And in fact, the entire history of government, regardless of what continent it was on, what the language of the people was, the dominant religion of the time, the culture, any factor you want to compare, the history of every government throughout all of time is a testimony to why government as a body should not be trusted ever. Oftentimes, governments are more dangerous to their own people than any hostile foreign nation, and I think many of us could attest to that right now. Second thing, it is necessary to remove tyrants from office and prosecute them for the gross excesses of authority, and at this point, what constitutes crimes against humanity. Until politicians have real consequences for their actions, they will never change their behavior. It won't matter who you elect. It will go on. Third thing, the pharmaceutical companies and government agencies have a grotesque and incestuous relationship. These institutions have no credibility. They destroyed any possibility of that through their own actions, and so therefore should not be given any power over anyone, and people should not be bending the knee. 4. It's increasingly difficult to tell the difference between a physician who's prescribing treatments out of an honest belief that it will help the patient and a physician who's nothing more than a salesman for Big Pharma. Moving forward, it will be essential to separate the wheat from the chaff, as our Christian brethren would say, in order to restore the honor of the medical profession, because That is one institution that when people have good reason to doubt their competency or to doubt their intentions, that creates a huge mess in a society. So that absolutely needs to get sorted out. Now, the fifth thing is regarding the lockdowns, the vaccine passports, social distancing, and all the other blah, blah, blah measures. All these things have primarily accomplished one thing. It's that people are being isolated from each other. And there's a conspicuous number of other societal influences that have the end result of keeping people isolated. Certainly, division over politics, over religion, social issues, and then, of course, the resulting cancel culture that actively promotes social alienation and it normalizes it because it's so widespread. Technology has become a master instead of the servant that it ought to be. That also prevents genuine human connections from forming because we spend more time with our machines than we do interacting with the people who are actually in the same geographic location as we are. Even something as simple as the destruction of having a common etiquette in our culture, courtesy of the baby boomers and Generation X who thought etiquette was superficial. We're seeing the results now. This has created barriers between people because no one really knows how to behave. I mean, just in general, let alone on formal occasions or even as something as simple as a potluck get together. People just don't know how to behave. Then the art of conversation has largely been lost, and many people have just given up trying. Yeah, isolated people are vulnerable. Isolation promotes fear, anxiety, depression. It makes people psychologically weak and easier to manipulate. This serves the interest of tyrants. Therefore, it is our duty to defy them at every opportunity. I realize it is very strange that us all gathering together for Christmas or Yule or the winter solstice or Saturnalia, whatever we are celebrating, just doing that, enjoying everyone's company without fear, and upholding our traditions, it now constitutes an act of rebellion. But since we're here in this bizarro, upside down world, we might as well enjoy ourselves. I am happy to say I've been hearing more about some very brave souls who, even though they're in very restrictive environments, they're going out of the way to make a point of carrying on their traditions and their celebrations with gusto. I mean, if you're going to make a point, might as well make sure that nobody misses it. It's going to take a very long and sustained no to make the insanity stop. Until then, the politicians and the corporations, they just won't have any motivation to take opposition seriously. They'll just continue running roughshod over all of us. So it's important. You might not think that something as simple as getting together for Christmas it means all that much, but it does. Now, of course, not every rebellious thing that we can do or might be called upon to do will be particularly fun. But in this case, it is. I mean, just imagine how foolish a police officer would have to feel. It's like he's interrupting, the family Christmas at Nana's. It's like, you bad people, you got together, you ate food, you sang songs, and you exchanged presents. What horrible social deviants you are. I mean, just imagine how dumb they have to feel. I mean, that if nothing else, that'd make a hell of a story. Because it's celebrating holidays is joyful. Hopefully no one gets arrested for the almighty crime of getting together with other human beings for Christmas. But regardless, we shouldn't let anyone take this from us, and we shouldn't let anyone persuade ourselves that we're doing wrong. It just shouldn't happen. Now, if COVID was going to be like the plague that we saw during the Middle Ages, where would wipe out 25 to 50% of the population in one go, not only would we know that by now, but it would be an unavoidable truth. No one would have to tell any of us to be careful or to take precautions or to sign up for certain treatments. We would be stampeding towards those things. Human survival instincts regarding immediate physical threats are actually pretty good. We would know enough to be afraid of the effects of a virus if that fear was actually warranted. But for people who are just looking at the numbers saying, okay, if this was so horrible, where's the body bags? Why isn't the local funeral parlor, completely backed up? We would know. We're not seeing the evidence that it's as bad as what people try to say. So really, the only fear that people seem to have now are the ones who've been provoked into that fear by the media, who seems to delight in scaring people. Nasty group of fuckers, aren't they? So, are you planning on continuing to listen to these tyrants and the hypochondriacs who are lost themselves in 2022 and beyond? I'm not. And if you're watching this video, I'm guessing you probably won't be either. But it has to be admitted that there are some people who are so lost to the fear-mongering that they're going to have a very difficult time disengaging from the hysteria and from hanging on the words of tyrants and obsessing over it. It's become like an addiction almost. And of course, as long as they see that submitting to all this is key to their survival, they'll continue to do it. It will take a very significant mental and emotional earthquake to begin for people to begin to seriously question their worldview. And until someone experiences that internally, there isn't much that can be done from the outside. However, people are beginning to suffer and feel the effects of all of the stupidity of the past 2 years. So the cracks are probably going to begin to show for a lot of people. And once they do, then it's possible to plant seeds in those cracks. And just as, if we were to plant seeds in the cracks of concrete, eventually the plants would come up and they would push that concrete further away from each other, creating a bigger crack, creating a bigger hole. And, if you follow the analogy, eventually there will be enough of a crack for someone to see that, oh, there's a whole world outside of this, and maybe I want to get up at there instead of cowering down here. So I think one of the seeds we could plant that, again, not everyone's going to see or be open to, but some people will, is just behaving normally. Behaving as we would any other year if all the insanity wasn't going on. And then letting those people who are still afraid observe that the world isn't actually ending. It's possible to live without fear. It's possible to live normally. It's possible to live without obeying the commands of the all-knowing overlords and still be okay. People need to see that. They need to see that others are not damaged. Now, we've all taken a toll. I mean, there's no denying that. But if we are less damaged than what they are, when they've been doing everything that they've been told, to the 10th decimal point, and they're worse off than before, and then they can compare that with other people who are okay, that might help. Because reality has a way of intruding on illusions, even very deeply entrenched illusions. And I think Christmas and Yule and everything else, it's a good time to shatter at least a few of those illusions, especially the illusions of tyrants who think they're in charge of our culture and how we live our lives. So, I hope you are a fellow rebellious spirit and you'll be doing the proper thing and enjoying your celebrations as normally. I think that's all I have to say for that. Of course, encourage anyone else who's wanting to be brave and wanting to actually celebrate their holidays. Whatever it is that they're celebrating, just encourage them to do that. Let them know it's okay. They have support. They're not crazy. Other people are doing this too. I think it might help bring some people who have their little doubts about what's been going on out of the shadows and taking more of a stand, which ultimately, in the long run, that does go to help. But till then, enjoy your holidays. If you'd like to come visit me at Blackbird's Brew, you're welcome to do so. There will be a link to join in the description box below. And of course, subscribe, like, comment. I will see you in another video. Bye-bye.